Look lady, I ordered my steak medium rare, not burnt to hell, the man snarled at the 42-year-old waitress. Maybe try paying attention instead of daydreaming. Sarah quietly took the plate back, her weathered hands steady despite his verbal assault. What he didn't know was that those hands had once operated in the most dangerous waters on earth. Because Sarah Mitchell wasn't just any small-town waitress dealing with difficult customers. She was former Navy SEAL Team 6, one of only 12 women to ever complete the program. Those steady hands had defused underwater bombs and eliminated high-value targets in classified operations. But the demanding customer was about to learn something even more shocking: why Sarah had really come to work at Mickey's Diner, and what would happen when 3 armed men walked through that door at exactly 2:47 p.m. Mickey's Diner sat like a forgotten memory on the edge of Millbrook, Texas, a town where everybody knew everybody's business except when it came to Sarah Mitchell. She'd been serving coffee and pie for 18 months, arriving each morning at 5 a.m. to prep for the breakfast rush, staying until closing to count the register and clean the grill. At 42, Sarah moved through the cramped restaurant with an efficiency that older regulars attributed to good work ethic. Her graying brown hair was always pulled back in the same practical ponytail, her uniform pressed but showing wear at the elbows and knees. She spoke when spoken to, smiled when required, and disappeared into the background of small-town life like she'd been born invisible. The morning crowd at Mickey's was predictable as sunrise. Tommy Rodriguez, the sheriff's deputy, took his usual booth and ordered black coffee with wheat toast. Maria Santos, who ran the flower shop next door, preferred her eggs over easy with a side of gossip. And then there was Craig Dalton. Dalton owned the largest construction company in 3 counties, drove a $90,000 pickup truck, and treated Mickey's Diner like his personal kingdom. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he held court at the corner booth, conducting business meetings while making sure everyone knew how important he was. Sarah. Dalton's voice cut across the diner's morning chatter. This coffee's cold again. What am I paying for here, incompetence? Sarah walked over with the coffee pot, her expression neutral. Sorry about that, Mr. Dalton. Let me get you a fresh cup. You know what your problem is? Dalton continued, loud enough for the entire diner to hear. You don't take pride in your work. Probably why you're stuck serving coffee instead of doing something meaningful with your life. The diner went quiet. Tommy Rodriguez looked up from his newspaper, uncomfortable with the public humiliation but unwilling to intervene. Maria Santos shook her head but said nothing. This was Dalton's show, and everyone knew he enjoyed having an audience. Sarah poured the fresh coffee with hands that didn't shake, despite the familiar burn of public embarrassment. Anything else I can get you, sir? Yeah, Dalton smirked, maybe try not to screw up the simple stuff. It's coffee, not rocket science. What Dalton didn't know was that Sarah had once navigated a nuclear submarine through enemy waters. She'd operated in conditions where a single mistake meant death for her entire team. Brewing coffee was actually quite simple compared to defusing explosive charges while holding her breath underwater for 6 minutes. But Sarah had learned the art of invisibility for a reason. 2 years ago, she'd been Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, one of the most decorated female operators in Navy SEAL history. The transition from classified operations to civilian life wasn't supposed to include public humiliation from small-town bullies, but here she was, choosing silence over confrontation. Mickey Valdez, the diner's 68-year-old owner, watched the exchange from behind the grill. He'd hired Sarah based on a single conversation and a handshake, asking no questions about her past or references. Something in her eyes had told him she was running from something, and Mickey had learned to recognize people who needed a place to disappear. After Dalton left for his construction site, Mickey approached Sarah as she cleaned the coffee station. You don't have to take that from him, you know. Man's got a mouth bigger than his brain. Sarah continued wiping down the counter. It's fine, Mickey. I've heard worse. Have you? Mickey studied her profile, noting the way she positioned herself to monitor both entrances while they talked. Sometimes I wonder what kind of worse you've heard. Sarah met his eyes for just a moment. Mickey saw something there that reminded him of his son, a Marine who'd come home from Afghanistan changed in ways that didn't show on the outside. Past is past, Sarah said simply. I'm here now. Mickey nodded and returned to his grill, but he filed the conversation away. In his experience, people who claimed their past didn't matter were usually the ones carrying the heaviest history. The lunch rush brought its own challenges. Dalton returned with 3 business associates, treating Mickey's diner like his personal conference room. They spread blueprints across 2 tables, spoke loudly about million-dollar contracts, and snapped their fingers at Sarah when they needed refills. Miss. One of Dalton's guests, a thin man in an expensive suit, called out impatiently. We've been waiting 5 minutes for more coffee. What kind of service is this? Sarah arrived with the coffee pot within seconds. Sorry for the wait. Would you like cream or sugar? What I'd like, the man said, looking at his companions with amusement, is service that doesn't make us wait. Maybe your boss should hire staff who can keep up with professional environments. Dalton laughed. Don't mind Sarah here. She's what passes for fine dining in Millbrook. Probably the best she could do with her education level. The comment hit harder than Sarah expected. She'd graduated summa cum laude from the Naval Academy before completing SEAL training, spoke 4 languages, and held advanced degrees in tactical operations and underwater demolition. But defending herself would require explanations she couldn't give. I'll be more attentive, she said quietly, refilling their cups. See that you are, Dalton replied dismissively. We're conducting real business here, not serving coffee to truck drivers. As Sarah walked away, she caught Tommy Rodriguez watching the exchange with growing discomfort. The deputy had always been polite to her, treating her with the basic respect that seemed beyond Dalton's capabilities. Hey Sarah, Tommy called out as she passed his booth. Could I get some more of that apple pie? Mickey makes the best in Texas. It was a small kindness, but Sarah appreciated the deputy's attempt to restore some dignity to the situation. Coming right up, Tommy. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. A woman in her 50s, wearing a pressed pantsuit and carrying a briefcase, entered the diner and took a seat at the counter. She ordered coffee and a slice of pie, but Sarah noticed the way her eyes swept the room, professionally, systematically, like someone conducting surveillance. Excuse me, the woman said when Sarah brought her order. Are you Sarah Mitchell? Sarah's blood turned to ice. In 18 months, no one had connected her current identity to her past. I'm sorry, do we know each other? The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. My name is Agent Patricia Cole, Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Could we speak privately? The coffee cup in Sarah's hand didn't rattle, but only because of years of training in controlling physical responses to stress. I'm working. Maybe you could come back later. It's important, Agent Cole insisted. It concerns your former teammate, Commander David Chen. Sarah's throat tightened. Chen had been her squad leader during her last deployment, a man she trusted with her life countless times. Give me 5 minutes. Mickey, who'd been eavesdropping from the kitchen, nodded when Sarah looked his way. He'd cover her tables. Agent Cole led Sarah to the parking lot, where a black sedan waited with another agent behind the wheel. Commander Chen is missing, Cole said without preamble. He disappeared 3 days ago from a classified facility in Virginia. We have reason to believe he's been compromised. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities. Chen was too smart to be taken easily, too experienced to make careless mistakes. If he was missing, it was either voluntary or the result of a very sophisticated operation. What does this have to do with me? Sarah asked. I've been out for 2 years. Chen's last known communication mentioned your name, Cole replied. He was investigating something called Operation Undertow. Ever heard of it? Sarah's blood ran cold. Operation Undertow was supposed to be buried so deep that even mentioning it was a federal crime. It had been her last mission, the one that had ended her career and forced her into hiding. "I can't help you," Sarah said, turning back toward the diner. "Commander Chen thought you could," Agent Cole called after her. "He left a message saying if anything happened to him, we should find Sarah Mitchell and tell her the ghosts are still hunting." Sarah stopped walking. "The ghosts are still hunting." It was Chen's code phrase from their last mission, when they discovered that the arms dealers they'd been tracking had connections inside the Pentagon. People they'd trusted had been selling classified information, and when Sarah and Chen had tried to report it through proper channels, they'd become targets themselves. "I'll ask you again," Agent Cole said, approaching slowly. "Can you help us find Commander Chen?" Before Sarah could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from Mickey. "3 men in black SUVs just pulled up. Asking about you. Back door is unlocked." Sarah's training kicked in instantly. If Chen was missing and NCIS was here, it meant Operation Undertow had been compromised. The same people who'd forced her into hiding were now cleaning up loose ends. "Agent Cole," Sarah said calmly, "I think we're both in danger." That's when the shooting started. The first gunshot shattered the diner's front window, sending glass cascading across the checkered linoleum floor. Sarah tackled Agent Cole behind a parked car as automatic gunfire erupted from 3 different positions. Through the diner's windows, she could see customers diving for cover, Mickey pulling Maria Santos behind the counter. "Who the hell are those people?" Cole shouted over the gunfire, drawing her sidearm. "The same people who've been hunting Chen," Sarah replied, her voice deadly calm. She was no longer the quiet waitress who'd taken abuse from Craig Dalton. In the space of 3 seconds, she'd become something else entirely. Sarah scanned the tactical situation with eyes trained to assess threats in milliseconds. 3 black SUVs positioned to block escape routes. 6 armed men, possibly more, using military-style formation and equipment. Professional killers, not street criminals. "Stay down," Sarah commanded, her tone carrying absolute authority. Agent Cole, despite her federal training, found herself obeying without question. Inside the diner, chaos reigned. Tommy Rodriguez had drawn his service weapon but was pinned behind an overturned table. Dalton and his business associates were screaming and calling 911 on phones that wouldn't matter. By the time backup arrived, this would be over one way or another. One of the gunmen kicked through the diner's rear entrance, assault rifle raised. He was moving with tactical precision, the kind Sarah recognized from her own operations. But he'd made one crucial mistake: he'd entered her territory without understanding what he was facing. Sarah moved like liquid shadow, using the parked cars as cover while she circled toward the diner's rear. Her 18 months of hiding had been careful preparation, not random choice. She'd selected Millbrook because of its tactical advantages, limited access points, clear sight lines, and enough distance from major highways to control the battlefield if necessary. The rear gunman never saw her coming. Sarah disabled him with a blood choke that left him unconscious in 15 seconds, relieving him of his weapons and communication gear. Through his earpiece, she could hear the team leader coordinating the assault. "Alpha, Beta, Sitrep. Where's our target?" Sarah keyed the radio, modulating her voice to match military communications protocols. "Alpha in position. Target not in main dining area. Checking kitchen. Copy, Alpha. Maintain position. Charlie team, breach from the front." Now Sarah knew their plan: squeeze the building from both ends, eliminating everyone inside to ensure no witnesses. It was the same tactic she'd seen used in classified operations overseas. These weren't random criminals, they were part of the same network that had been hunting Operation Undertow survivors. Through the kitchen service window, Sarah could see the remaining customers huddled behind overturned tables. Tommy Rodriguez was bleeding from a glass cut but still returning suppressive fire. Mickey had positioned himself to shield Maria Santos, his old body absorbing the terror that should have been hers. And there was Craig Dalton, the man who'd spent months humiliating her, now cowering behind a booth and whimpering with fear. Sarah felt no satisfaction in his terror. Her training had taught her to separate mission objectives from personal emotions. Right now, everyone in that diner was under her protection, regardless of how they treated her. She slipped through the kitchen's rear entrance, moving with the silent precision that had made her one of the Navy's most effective operators. The industrial kitchen provided perfect concealment, steel prep tables, hanging pots, and multiple sight lines to the dining area. The second gunman entered through the front, rifle scanning for targets. He was good, well-trained, disciplined, professional. But Sarah had been trained by the best military instructors in the world, and she'd learned from actual combat what textbooks couldn't teach. She watched him advance, noting his movement patterns, the way he held his weapon, the interval between his visual sweeps. When he turned to check the counter area, Sarah struck. The engagement lasted 4 seconds. Sarah disarmed him with a joint manipulation that shattered his elbow, followed by a blood choke that left him unconscious before his brain could register the pain. She relieved him of his weapons and moved toward the next threat. Beta, Charlie, Alpha's not responding, came the voice through the radio. Target may be mobile. Switch to containment protocol. Containment protocol meant they were going to burn the building with everyone inside. Sarah had seen it done before: make it look like a gas explosion, eliminate all witnesses, file a report about a tragic accident at a small-town diner. She keyed the radio again. Beta here. Kitchen secure. Multiple casualties. Requesting immediate exfil. Negative, Beta. Complete the protocol. No survivors. The cold professionalism in the team leader's voice confirmed Sarah's worst fears. These weren't just arms dealers or corrupt officials, they were part of a systematic elimination campaign targeting everyone connected to Operation Undertow. Through the service window, she could see the third gunman positioning an incendiary device near the gas lines. He had maybe 2 minutes before the explosion would level the building. Sarah made a decision that would expose everything she'd worked to hide. But 18 months of invisibility meant nothing if everyone she'd grown to care about died in the flames. She stepped into the dining room, no longer the quiet waitress but moving with the lethal confidence of a Navy SEAL operator. Her stolen assault rifle was held in perfect tactical position, her stance balanced for rapid engagement from multiple angles. Tommy, she called out, her voice carrying across the chaos with unmistakable command authority. Keep everyone down. Mickey, get Maria to the walk-in freezer. Now. The third gunman spun toward her voice, his rifle tracking toward her position. But Sarah had already calculated his response time, his sight lines, his available cover. She'd been doing this math since before he'd graduated high school. Her single shot dropped him before he could return fire. The diner fell silent except for the hiss of the damaged gas line and the distant sound of sirens. Sarah quickly disarmed the incendiary device, her hands moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who defused much more complex explosives under enemy fire. Craig Dalton emerged from behind his booth, his expensive suit torn and his face pale with shock. Who, what, how did you? Sarah looked at him with eyes that held no warmth, no forgiveness, but also no malice. I'm someone who knows how to protect people, Mr. Dalton. Even people who don't deserve it. Agent Cole appeared from the parking lot, her weapon drawn but lowered. She surveyed the 3 unconscious gunmen, the disabled explosive device, and Sarah standing calmly in the center of the destruction. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, Cole said, her voice carrying new respect. I think we need to have that conversation now. The FBI tactical team arrived 30 minutes later, followed by a convoy of black vehicles that Sarah recognized as naval intelligence. The small parking lot of Mickey's Diner had been transformed into a federal crime scene, complete with evidence markers and officials in expensive suits who spoke in hushed tones about classified matters. Sarah sat at the undamaged counter, still wearing her uniform but no longer invisible. Every person in that diner was looking at her differently now, not the quiet waitress who'd served their coffee, but someone whose true capabilities had been revealed in the space of a few explosive minutes. Admiral Catherine Price, Director of Naval Special Operations, entered the diner with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Sarah had met her twice during her active duty career, both times during classified briefings that officially never happened. "Commander Mitchell," Admiral Price said, using Sarah's former rank. "It's good to see you alive." "Admiral." Sarah stood and saluted, muscle memory overriding 18 months of civilian habits. "At ease." Price gestured for Sarah to sit back down. "Agent Cole has briefed me on the situation. These weren't random criminals, were they?" Sarah glanced around the diner, noting that Mickey, Tommy Rodriguez, and the other customers were being interviewed by FBI agents. Only Craig Dalton remained close enough to overhear, his earlier arrogance replaced by shocked silence. "No ma'am," Sarah replied. "Same network we identified during Operation Undertow. They've been eliminating survivors systematically." Admiral Price nodded grimly. "Commander Chen isn't the first to disappear. We've lost 3 other operators in the past 6 months, all made to look like accidents. We now believe someone inside Naval Intelligence has been providing target lists." The weight of that revelation settled over Sarah like a familiar burden. She'd hoped that leaving active duty would end her involvement in the shadow war that surrounded Operation Undertow. Instead, it had followed her to a small Texas diner and nearly killed innocent civilians. "What do you need from me, Admiral?" "Your help finding Chen and identifying the mole." Price's expression grew harder. "You and Chen were the only operators who saw the complete picture during Undertow. If someone's selling information, you're the only one left who can identify them." Sarah looked through the diner's shattered windows at the FBI agents processing evidence, at the small town that had given her 18 months of peace now disrupted by violence that followed her like a curse. "I can't go back," she said quietly. "I have a life here now. Do you?" Admiral Price followed her gaze. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your war found you anyway." Before Sarah could respond, Craig Dalton approached their table. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by something that might have been humility. "Ma'am," he said to Admiral Price, then looked at Sarah. "I owe you an apology. A big one." Sarah studied his face, seeing genuine contrition for the first time. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Dalton." "Yes, I do." Dalton's voice was steady despite the circumstances. "I spent months treating you like you were beneath me. Making jokes about your education, your worth, your place in this town. And today you saved my life." He paused, struggling with words that didn't come easily to a man accustomed to being the most important person in every room. "I don't know what you did before you came here," Dalton continued, "but I know what you did today. You protected people who didn't deserve it. People like me." Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a small loosening of the anger she'd carried for months. "We all deserve protection, Mr. Dalton. Even when we don't act like it." Admiral Price watched the exchange with professional interest. "Commander, your actions today saved 12 civilian lives and neutralized a significant terrorist threat. The Navy would like to offer you reinstatement with full rank and back pay." The offer hung in the air like an invitation to step back into a world Sarah had deliberately left behind. She could see the path clearly: return to active duty, help find Chen, eliminate the mole, and resume the classified operations that had once defined her identity. But she could also see Mickey behind the counter, sweeping up broken glass while Maria Santos helped him inventory the damage. She could see Tommy Rodriguez giving his statement to FBI agents, his deputy's uniform torn but his dignity intact. She could see a small town that had given her anonymity and peace, now marked forever by violence that had followed her there. "I need 24 hours to decide," Sarah said finally. Admiral Price nodded. "Understood. But Commander, you should know that Chen left something for you. Agent Cole will brief you on the details." As the federal officials prepared to leave, Mickey approached Sarah with a cup of coffee and his characteristic directness. "So," he said, settling onto the stool beside her. "Navy SEAL, huh?" Sarah smiled for the first time since the shooting started. Among other things. Any other surprises I should know about? Secret agent? Assassin? President's daughter? Just a waitress who knows how to handle difficult customers. Mickey chuckled, but his expression grew serious. You saved us all today, Sarah. Whatever else you've done, wherever else you've been, you chose to protect us. That matters. It matters to me too, Sarah replied. This place, you gave me something I didn't know I needed. What's that? A home. That evening, alone in her small apartment above the hardware store, Sarah opened the package Agent Cole had left for her. Inside was an encrypted drive and a handwritten note from Commander Chen. Sarah, if you're reading this, the ghosts caught up with me. The mole is someone we both trusted, someone with access to our complete mission files. I've compiled evidence, but I need your help to identify them. The drive contains surveillance footage from the Pentagon from the week before our last briefing. One of these faces is our traitor. Trust no one except the people you've chosen to protect. Your friend, David. Sarah plugged the drive into her laptop and began reviewing hundreds of hours of security footage. Faces flashed across the screen, officers she'd served with, administrators she'd reported to, colleagues she'd trusted with classified information. 3 hours later, she found what Chen had died trying to reveal. The next morning, Admiral Price returned to Mickey's diner to receive Sarah's answer. The breakfast crowd was smaller than usual, but Maria Santos was serving coffee to the regulars who decided that a little excitement wouldn't keep them from Mickey's eggs and hash browns. I'll help you find Chen and identify the mole, Sarah told the Admiral. But I'm not returning to active duty. May I ask why? Sarah gestured around the diner, at Mickey flipping pancakes on the grill, at Tommy Rodriguez reading his newspaper, at the community that had accepted her without questions or judgment. Because these people need protection too, she said. And I've learned that home isn't a place you serve, it's a place you choose to defend. Admiral Price studied her for a moment, then nodded. Very well. We'll arrange for you to work as a civilian consultant. The Navy will provide security for the town while you help us resolve Operation Undertow. Sarah smiled, feeling the weight of 2 years of hiding finally lift from her shoulders. Admiral, I think you'll find that this town is already pretty well protected. The new sign outside Mickey's diner read, Millbrook Community Cafe, home of the best coffee in Texas. The renovations had been paid for by an anonymous donor, though everyone in town suspected Craig Dalton's involvement. Sarah still worked the morning shift, but now she also taught a women's self-defense class at the community center and served as an unofficial security consultant for the sheriff's department. Her past was no longer a secret, but it was no longer a burden either. Commander Chen had been found alive in a Russian safe house, rescued in an operation that Sarah had planned from Mickey's kitchen while Tommy Rodriguez provided tactical support and Maria Santos kept everyone fed. The mole, a naval intelligence analyst who'd been selling information for 15 years, was serving a life sentence in a federal prison. Craig Dalton had become one of Sarah's most unlikely allies, using his construction company to provide security upgrades throughout the town and funding a scholarship program for military families. His weekly meetings at Mickey's diner had evolved into community planning sessions where his business acumen served purposes beyond profit. On this particular Tuesday morning, as Sarah refilled coffee cups and took orders for Mickey's famous pancakes, a new customer entered the diner. He was young, nervous, wearing an ill-fitting suit and carrying himself with the familiar tension of someone running from something. Sarah watched him take a corner booth and order coffee with hands that shook slightly. She'd seen that look before, in her own mirror, 18 months earlier. Rough morning? She asked, approaching his table with the coffee pot. You could say that, he replied, studying her face with recognition. You're Sarah Mitchell. I've heard about you. Nothing too bad, I hope. The young man smiled for the first time since entering. Actually, I heard you help people who don't have anywhere else to turn. Sarah poured his coffee and pulled out her order pad. What can I get you besides coffee? Maybe, he said quietly, a chance to start over. Sarah looked around the diner, at Mickey cooking breakfast for people who'd become family, at Tommy Rodriguez planning his patrol routes to include extra checks on elderly residents, at Maria Santos arranging flowers that brightened every table. "Well," she said, clicking her pen and smiling, "you've come to the right place." Outside, the Texas sun climbed higher into a clear sky, warming a small town where second chances were served alongside the coffee, and where a former Navy SEAL had learned that sometimes the most important missions were the ones that brought you home. In our darkest moments, kindness still finds a way. Often in the quietest places, not everyone who helps wants recognition. Some just need to know that today, someone isn't going hungry. And sometimes that alone is enough to change a life. You may forget the story, but if no one retells it, history stays silent forever. Subscribe to True Stories Zone, where justice is honored, kindness is remembered, and no act of quiet heroism is ever lost.